Welcome back to Destination Pro Wrestling. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. As you know, I bring the daily news and rumors in pro wrestling. Some interesting stuff here. AEW TNT wants CM Punk to be the face of the show. Bleacher Report came out with an article, 3 WWE superstars likely to sign with AEW. And on top of that, former UFC welterweight contender, he just lost to Kamaru Usman. That's right, we're talking about Colby Covington. He wants to go to the WWE, and yes, he took some shots at AEW. So we have to talk about this. We're going to talk about Colby Covington first. If you're not a fan of the UFC, then you may not know who Colby Covington is. I believe he has a total record of 23 wins or 21 wins and 3 losses. 2 of his losses came against the current champion, arguably pound for pound, one of the best fighters in MMA, Kamaru Usman. Both of those fights were incredibly entertaining. Colby Covington right now, the thing about his shtick is it's very fake, it's very forced, but he plays a heel. And there is a lot of WWE and pro wrestling influence in Colby Covington. If you don't watch the UFC, you might not know this, but Colby Covington actually comes out to the Octagon with Kurt Angle's theme music. Now, with that being said, Colby Covington was asked about possibly going to WWE, and well, he basically took some major shots at AEW, calling them a second level promotion. This was due to, if you guys aren't familiar with this, Colby Covington used to actually fight as part of American Top Team, which right now AEW has them all featured. Junior Dos Santos, Jorge Masvidal, Austin Vanderford, Paige Van Zant, all of these people that are part of American Top Team are currently on AEW, right? Andre Arlovsky. So here's the thing. Colby Covington is basically saying like WWE would be the only place he would go to. He doesn't want to be associated with the losers from American Top Team. And then obviously he doesn't want to be in AEW because they are not number one like WWE. Now, the thing is, Colby Covington's remarks are exactly what you would expect from somebody who is outside of the wrestling world. Everybody knows that WWE is no longer the destination for free agents to sign. But if you are a professional athlete outside of WWE, right? You know that WWE in the mainstream is the number one pro wrestling promotion there is. And Colby Covington, believe it or not, I think he would be exceptionally well in pro wrestling. I think he would be great in AEW or WWE, just mainly because he is so good at getting people to react. And whether or not he's forcing it or whatever it may be, if you're not familiar with it, it's hard to explain. But this guy knows how to get people talking about him when the cameras are on. And even in defeat, people still want to watch him fight because he didn't get decisively knocked out by Usman. It went to decision. You can argue the decision made by the judges, but it is very interesting that Colby Covington does have his sights on WWE. And honestly, I would like to see it happen at some point. But if you watch the UFC, next fight that they probably have him scheduled for would be Jorge Masvidal, who is also currently on AEW. Speaking of AEW, we got to talk about CM Punk. Warner Media, they are interested in having CM Punk become the face of TNT and the face of AEW. And this is largely due to the fact that ratings and everything business-wise has been very high for AEW and Warner Media. So I'm assuming ad revenue and a whole bunch of other different analytics that they're looking at has increased. Tony Khan has mentioned this several times ever since the debut of CM Punk. Pay-per-view buy rates have been higher. Look, I love the fact that CM Punk is in AEW. We have waited for his return for 7 years. I can't even argue the fact that CM Punk right now is best for business for AEW. But I like to look at things at the long term. And I think the biggest issue that pro wrestling has always had is that wrestling companies have always relied on one person to be the face of the brand. And WWE, historically, we saw it was The Rock. We saw it was John Cena. Now it's Roman Reigns. The problem is you're not developing new stars in WWE. And CM Punk is an established star in AEW. You don't want guys like Jungle Boy or MJF or, some of these other names to get lost in the shuffle. You got guys like Darby Allin, Jungle Boy, Brian Pillman Jr., MJF, the list goes on. Sammy Guevara, like you have these people here. And I think right now for TNT, the best strategy would be is to continue featuring CM Punk the way you're doing so. Put him in some prominent storylines, but make sure that you're putting him in storylines that can help push the youth of the show. Because at the end of the day, CM Punk might be good for business right now, which is awesome. But what's going to be better for AEW and TNT in the long run is when you have Jungle Boy fully established, when you have MJF fully established. Because once the mainstream audience starts tuning in, that is the type of people that you want your fans looking at, right? Like those names are the ones that you want your fans looking at, being like, hey, I never seen this guy before. Was he in WWE? Oh, no, he wasn't. Oh, look, AEW could develop talent. And again, it goes back to my argument with WWE. You're constantly having this issue where one guy is waving the flag for your company. Now you're having a hard time developing new stars. AEW in this situation just needs to make sure that they keep doing things the way they're doing things, because we are getting behind their talent. And if you want CM Punk to be the face of the brand, that's cool, but it cannot happen in a way that hurts your brand. And that's my fear, is you push them so much, people just get eventually sick and tired of it. And that's not what people want from AEW. Also, speaking of AEW and what people want, obviously there's been a lot of talk about WWE and the releases. Bleacher Report, which is also a part of the Warner Bros. Family, they just came out with an article. The 3 wrestlers from WWE's latest round of cuts, most likely to sign with AEW. Now, in this article, they were talking about the releases. They talked about some of the notable names: Mia Yim, Ember Moon, Nia Jax, Eva Marie. But there's 3 names that they believe will sign with AEW. And this article was written by Chris Rowling. Basically goes on to say Keith Lee, Karrion Kross, and Frankie Monet are the 3 that are most likely to sign with AEW. I found this to be a very interesting article because while I do heavily agree with the nature of this article, I think Frankie Monet, Karrion Kross, and Keith Lee all should be 3 key signings to AEW. I'm very intrigued to see what AEW does here, because in the last round of cuts, obviously Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, those guys didn't show up in AEW. Buddy Murphy didn't show up in AEW. I don't know if this is going to be another situation in which they're rumored to go to AEW, but for some reason it doesn't happen. Now, Karrion Kross, I think, fits immediately, right away. Put him in the AEW world title scene. Totally cool with that. I want to see Karrion Kross, Jon Moxley. I want to see Karrion Kross and CM Punk. I want to see Karrion Kross and MJF and Darby Allin, and there's a lot you can do. Frankie Monet, a.k.a. Taya Valkyrie, clearly a top women athlete, top wrestler. She is a legend in AAA. She did incredible stuff in Impact. I think you got to put her right there with Britt Baker, Ruby Soho, Jade Cargill. Now you got to start building that women's division even more. Also, Keith Lee, I don't even think it has to be explained. I talked about this before. Keith Lee and AEW makes all the sense because they are a wrestling company, not sports entertainment. Keith Lee is one of the best freaking wrestlers out there. Put him out there in AEW. Let's see what happens. I'm curious to see who AEW signs. Let me know what your guys' predictions are down in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.